Hi, thanks for joining me today. Is your partner's ex being very invasive into your life now? Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and I'll let you know every time I post. It may be useful to know just a few tips for how to manage the boundaries between you and your partner's ex. And it is worth establishing where your, and we'll call them red lines, are with this, because there's some stuff that you can let go and turn a blind eye to. And then there's other stuff where you think this isn't okay. It's difficult because the family is as it was before, and now you've arrived on the scene, and there can be huge assumptions around how things can continue to be or how things should be. So often you're sort of having to put a boundary in place where there wasn't one before. You also need a bit of strength for this because you're often not far into the relationship, and so you're not fully established, and you and your partner haven't quite formulated how your life is going to look like, and so you're having to sort of be brave and ask for things to be different quite soon in the relationship. So I think the red lines come where you have got to think to yourself, it doesn't have to be a complete deal breaker, but it's serious. You know, we're looking at you looking after yourself enough so that you can stay in this relationship happily and this environment where you're part of the step family. So if it's making you unhappy and you think to yourself, I'm not going to be able to stand this, or I don't want to stand for it, or I don't want to be in this relationship anymore, it's better that you address the red lines than let it go and go and go until you can't stand it anymore, and then the relationship splits up and everything falls to bits. So when you're in a situation where a red line is important to put in place for you in your sustainability of this relationship, you need to take action to look after yourself and your relationship before it gets much worse. It's when you feel like that as well is best when to talk to your partner about it, because then it comes from a place where it really matters for you, because you would be best to get him or her on side with you on it to be able to put the boundary in place so that it will be respected. Think carefully too about how many red lines you have, because if you have too many, it'll be too much for everybody to change. So just concentrate on the ones that matter the most to you. Things like drop-offs and pickups, then you not wanting your partner's ex to come into your house and up the stairs to your stepchild's bedroom, or your partner's ex being too invasive about the decisions that are made for the family. Things that really impact you. And then talk about it to your partner at a time when you have enough time to talk about it and you're not going to get interrupted, and ask them to back you up on this boundary. Now, often your partner doesn't have the strength to put the boundary in against their ex-partner, because things like they don't want to lose their relationship with their child. They may be fearful that if they insist on something, that their access to the child might be denied in some way, or that they haven't, up until now, ever held a boundary with their ex because their previous relationship was one in a way that the ex used to always dominate your partner, so therefore your partner hasn't been able to sort of stand up to their ex before. So sometimes you're dealing with a situation where your partner's ex assumes they can keep on doing what they always used to do and have the right to do it. So speak to your partner first of all and see if they're prepared to back you about this boundary that you're wanting to put in place. And then you announce the boundary, preferably at a time before it next happens, or immediately after a boundary has just been broken. And you say, this isn't to happen again and that's it. You're not allowed to do X. Then there'll be a time when they will try everything to break that boundary, to persuade you that that it's not going to be respected, and that they'll I don't know what they'll do, but often you get stories of your partner's ex ringing a million times, or texting, or abusing the boundary, or doing whatever you say you don't want them to do again, just to test you. But you've got to be ready to hold it, to really hold it. And you just say, it's not allowed. And you enforce it. And then, once you've got the boundary well communicated and they know what's expected and they know they're not going to get round you, they will then back off and things will be done differently. And that's what you're wanting. But it's not easy to do unless you're absolutely convinced that this is a red line you need to keep for you and your future relationship with your partner, and stick to it. It's important, because otherwise the relationship's going to fail. Now, there are some tips for holding communication boundaries with your partner's ex. And they're things like establishing communication mechanisms that work, but don't use the child as the messenger. Often, telephone calls and texts won't get responded to unless it's a medical emergency or some other emergency after, say, 7 p.m. at night. That it's good to wait a couple of days, 48 hours, before you reply to non-urgent texts, so that you let a little bit of time lapse before they respond to you again. If not 48 hours, 24 hours. Another tip is for neither of you to communicate with your partner's ex until each other have read the text you're about to send. So it's just to catch anything that is not quite said in the way it should be said, or is misleading in some way, or wrong in some way. So just keep communication at a reasonable level and at a distance, so it doesn't get out of control and angry. And then another tip for step families is to hold a once a year or once every 2 years, or more frequently if you can, meeting with the partner's ex, at which you can attend if you can, and your partner's ex's new partner can attend if they can, to establish the next couple of years going forward with regard to your stepchildren, so that things can be thrashed out about decisions and the future the next couple of years. So those are some tips for dealing with your partner's ex, and introduce and hold those boundaries that will make the difference to your relationship going forward. It's important, and change is never welcomed. So do it if it's important to you. We run workshops, sessions, an email response service, and we write booklets. Look in the description box below for links to our social media and website.